The 2024 presidential election map has seen a dramatic shift since President Joe Biden stepped out of the race, that is, according to prediction markets. At the time of recording this video, former President Donald Trump has a 55% chance of winning the presidency, while Vice President Kamala Harris trails behind with a 43% chance of winning. This means that if the election were held 100 times, Trump would win 55 times and Harris 43 times. Now, those are the overall odds, but how do the two contenders fare in the key battleground states on the 2024 Electoral College map that will ultimately determine who hits the necessary 270 electoral votes? Polymarket also has individual markets with the latest odds for Trump and Harris in each state, which is what we'll be using to fill out this electoral map here. The first thing we're going to do is label all of the states in which Republicans and Democrats have a better than 90% chance of winning. The safe states for Kamala Harris include Washington, Oregon, California, and Hawaii, Colorado, and Illinois. Then in the Northeast, New York, Maine's 1st Congressional District, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, and D.C., Washington, D.C. Now, Harris is expected to win each of these states by very comfortable margins, just as Biden did in 2020. Keep in mind as well that with the lone exception of Colorado, which has only just recently shifted hard to the left, none of these solid blue states have backed a Republican presidential candidate since at least 1988. As for Donald Trump now, his solid red states are Alaska, Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, North and South Dakota, Nebraska statewide and the 1st and 3rd congressional districts here, Kansas, Oklahoma, Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, South Carolina, Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, and West Virginia. Now here, with the exceptions of Ohio and Iowa, the rest of these safe red states have not backed a Democrat since the start of the 21st century, and Trump carried them all by at least 10 points in 2020. So these states lift Trump up to 148 electoral votes, behind Kamala Harris's safe state total of 191. There are 199 electoral votes left up for grabs on our electoral map, though most of them do hold a strong amount of lean toward one candidate. Let's go ahead and label our likely states now where Trump or Harris have between an 80 to 90% chance of winning. These will be colored in the second darkest shade of blue and red, indicating that one candidate is heavily favored, but an upset is not impossible. For Trump, that includes Maine's 2nd congressional district. Both Maine and Nebraska are unique in that they split their electoral votes, awarding 2 to the statewide winner and then 1 per congressional district. Trump won the 2nd district in Maine by 10 points in 2016 and then by 7 in 2020. He's got an 88% chance right now, according to Polymarket, so bordering on safe territory. Trump is also heavily favored to keep Florida in the GOP column for a 4th straight election cycle. 30 electoral votes, it's the 3rd most in the nation. The Sunshine State was pretty widely considered the most essential battleground on the map as recently as 2016, but is now considered a strongly Republican-leaning state after Trump carried it by an even larger margin in 2020 than he did in 2016, despite the nation shifting left. And then more recently in the 2022 midterms, Republicans Governor Ron DeSantis and Senator Marco Rubio were both re-elected by more than 15 points each. Now here in 2024, Polymarket has Trump with an 88% chance of winning. Finally, Texas is also likely for Trump, 40 electoral votes here, the 2nd most of any state behind California. It's one that Democrats have understandably poured a lot of resources into over the last couple decades, as its demographics have trended to the left, and a blue Texas would completely shift the electoral college balance in their favor. Joe Biden did win 46.5% of the vote in Texas in 2020, the most for a Democrat since 1976, But even as urban areas like Dallas and San Antonio have trended to the left, growing GOP support among Hispanics in South Texas has dampened Democratic hopes of flipping Texas blue anytime soon. Polymarket has Trump with an 89% chance of winning right now, so each of these likely Trump states are actually closer to safe than they are to lean. Now let's fill out the 2 likely blue states for Kamala Harris. First, New Mexico, a Biden plus 11 state in 2020. It has not voted Republican since 2004. Betting markets give Harris an 87% chance of holding it in the Democratic corner this November, as early polls have showed Biden ahead of Trump with a comfortable advantage, and a swing of 11 or more points in favor of Trump over just 4 years would be almost unheard of. Harris's next likely state is Minnesota, as according to Polymarket, Democrats have an 84% chance of winning. Biden carried Minnesota by 7 points in 2020 after Trump came within 1.5 points of Hillary Clinton in 2016. It does notably hold the longest active blue streak in the country, as it has not gone Republican since 1972, though more often than not, it is relatively competitive. Exactly 10 states to go now, plus the 2nd congressional district in Nebraska, worth a combined 113 electoral votes. Trump now leads Harris in the race to 270 with 219 to 206. Now, before we move on to the lean states, please take a second to consider subscribing to my channel down below. It's completely free and it does help me out tremendously. According to my channel analytics, nearly 90% of my viewers are not subscribed, so let's try and get that down to 50-50 by election day. Alrighty, let's name those lean states, where the odds of victory for either candidate are between 70 to 80%. There are no lean states for Trump, as per the latest odds, so on the Harris side, her first lean state is Virginia. Biden plus 10 in 2020. He became the first Democrat since 1944 to carry the Commonwealth by a double-digit margin. The growth and diversification of Northern Virginia, including the D.C. suburbs, enabled Biden's victory in 2020 without his campaign even spending all that much time here. Yet the polling for Biden this cycle had been subpar, to say the least. At the time of his withdrawal, he only led Trump by 1.3% based on 23 polls. But now the Harris versus Trump average is slightly more favorable to Democrats and to her, as she does lead by 2.6% based on 5 polls. And the latest Polymarket odds do give her a 78% chance of winning, so again, right on the edge between lean and likely here. Harris is also favored to win the 2 competitive New England states of New Hampshire and Maine. Polymarket does give Democrats a 75% chance of winning in New Hampshire and 78% in Maine. Joe Biden won Maine by 9 points in 2020 and New Hampshire by 7 after they were both decided by less than 3 points in 2016. Neither state has voted Republican since at least the 2000 election, and so it would take a seriously good environment for Trump to flip either state. The kind of environment that we may have been trending toward had Biden stayed in the race, but this is where Kamala Harris does stop the bleeding, so to speak. Now, the 7 states remaining are the 7 states that entered this cycle as the core swing states, the key battlegrounds projected to be the most hotly contested by the 2 campaigns, and ultimately end up as the closest in terms of margin for a second straight election cycle. They were each decided by less than 3 points in 2020 and flipped back and forth between Trump in 2016 to Biden in 2020. That is with the exception of Nevada, which went blue in both elections, and North Carolina, which voted for Trump twice. They're all going to be marked down as tilting toward a candidate or as a pure toss-up here on our map, with neither Trump or Harris currently holding better than 70% odds of winning any of them. Now let's start with the tilt states, where the chance of winning is between 55 to 70%. For Trump, that includes North Carolina. 16 electoral votes, it gained 1 in the census. Trump has a 69% chance of winning North Carolina, according to Polymarket, so bordering on lean territory. The Tar Heel state has not elected a Democrat to federal office since Barack Obama in 2008, and the GOP has now won the last 3 presidential and last 5 U.S. Senate races, each by less than 6 points, positioning North Carolina as a consistently purple, yet Republican-leaning state. Harris has spent a lot of time over the last couple of months in North Carolina, and if there's any state where she should overperform Biden, it would be in a state like North Carolina, with a high percentage of African American and young college-educated voters. But as Biden was trailing Trump by about 5 to 8 points pretty much all cycle long, it's still probably out of reach for her. Now, the remaining core Sunbelt battlegrounds will also all tilt in Trump's direction, with probabilities between 57 to 59%. Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. Nevada was Biden +2 in 2020. He won it by the same margin as Hillary Clinton in 2016. So considering the national shift in favor of Democrats between those elections, Nevada actually trended to the right at the state level. More recently, in the 2022 midterms, Republicans flipped the governorship, came within a point of unseating a reasonably popular Democratic incumbent senator, and received more votes across the 4 U.S. House races in Nevada as well, for the first time in decades. Given these voting trends, and again, Republican gains among Hispanics, Nevada, where the electorate is roughly a third Hispanic, is more likely than not to go to Trump, according to Polymarket, where Republicans have a 57% chance of winning. Moving along now, Arizona was the second closest state in 2020, after Georgia, at Biden +0.3. And like in Georgia, Biden's win was the first for a Democratic presidential candidate in over 25 years. Democrats have now won the last presidential race in Arizona, the last 3 U.S. Senate races, and the most recent governor election as well, but polls this cycle had shown Trump with a consistent lead over Biden. Now, early Harris versus Trump polls have shown her outperforming Biden, relatively speaking, which was expected as Harris's appeal as a candidate is more suited to the rapidly diversifying and generally younger Sunbelt states than up here in the Rust Belt. More on that to come. Latest odds via Polymarket do give Republicans a 59% chance here in Arizona. All right, closing out the tilt Trump states now, with Georgia, the closest state in 2020, Biden won it by just 0.2% over Trump, thanks to strong minority turnout, especially from black voters in the Atlanta metro region. Now, here in 2024, early polls were showing Trump making historic gains among black voters against Biden. But yet again, I do fully expect Harris to stop some of that bleeding here. Polymarket does give Republicans a 57% chance in Georgia, though, identical to Nevada. Now, with a sweep here across the Sunbelt region, former President Trump is right on the verge of 270 electoral votes with 268. One of the key storylines here in 2024, within the context of electoral college math, is that even if Trump does sweep the Sunbelt battlegrounds, all Democrats have to do, in this case Kamala Harris, is hold the core Rust Belt trio of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Before we get to those states, though, let's go ahead and mark Nebraska's 2nd congressional district as tilting toward Harris. Taking a look over at the market via Polymarket here, we see Democrats with a 67% chance of winning. Joe Biden did carry this district by 7 points in 2020, and it's rapidly left trending, having previously backed Trump by 2 points in 2016. Nebraska 02 is pretty much entirely based around the city of Omaha and is therefore very urban and has a large number of college graduates, 2 demographic factors that have favored Democratic candidates over the last few decades. Alrighty, now for this infamous Rust Belt trio that has voted for the same candidate as one another in 8 straight cycles between 1988 and 2024, voting blue every time except in 2016 when Trump carried all 3 in a surprise sweep. Joe Biden had generally been polling less poorly across these 3 states than in any of the battlegrounds across the Sun Belt, and that has been reflected in the betting odds here, whereas Trump has around a 57 to 59% chance of carrying the key Sun Belt battlegrounds. These odds almost completely flip here across the upper Rust Belt. Now, this can also largely be attributed to the current polling contrast between Harris and Trump across these 2 regions as well. At the time of recording this video, Harris leads Trump by 0.7% based on 9 polls in Wisconsin, 48.6% to 47.9%. And she also leads him in Michigan by 1.2% based on 8 polls, 47.9% to 46.7%. Meanwhile, Trump does continue to lead the vice president in Pennsylvania by 1.9% based on 15 polls, 48.3% to 46.4%. Though this does remain lower in comparison to the former Republican president's advantages across the Sun Belt. He is up 2.5% in Nevada based on 6 polls, and he's up 3.4% in Arizona based on 9 polls. And finally, over in Georgia, Trump leads Harris by 3.1% based on 11 polls. Now, finally, back to the polymarket odds, we see Trump narrowly favored in Wisconsin with a 51% chance of winning. It's important to note here that Trump has outperformed the polls in Wisconsin by a greater margin than in any other state in both of his previous elections. And both fundamentally and demographically, it is the most Republican-friendly of the Rust Belt trio. Still, with just a 51% chance of winning, Wisconsin will be marked down as a toss-up here on our map. And then over in Michigan, the bluest of the three, fundamentally and demographically, it voted for Biden by 3 points in 2020, as compared to just a point in Pennsylvania and less than a point in Wisconsin. Democrats have also been overperforming here in Michigan in down-ballot races since the Supreme Court struck down Roe v. Wade in early 2022. One key feature of these 3 Rust Belt states, perhaps explaining why Democrats are polling better, is the fact that they are less religious and thereby less pro-life than the Sun Belt states, broadly speaking. Polymarket currently gives Harris a 55% chance of winning in Michigan right now, so bordering on the edge of toss-up. It instead goes in the tilt blue column for the vice president on our map. And then finally, we have Pennsylvania, the keystone state both in name and practice. With 19 electoral votes, it is the largest prize among the key battlegrounds this cycle. The polymarket odds currently give Harris just a 54% chance of winning here right now, which does translate to another toss-up on our electoral map. So that pretty much does it for today's video, where I filled out a 2024 electoral college map based on the latest odds on Polymarket. Trump is favored in the Electoral College race with 268 Electoral College votes over Harris's 240, although neither candidate does hit the magic number 270 needed to win the presidency, with the key states of Wisconsin and Pennsylvania remaining as toss-ups. Now, should Harris hold those 2 states in her corner, she would hit exactly 270 electoral votes. Let me know in the comments what you think of this map, as well as any other videos you would like to see in the future. Shout out to my channel members on screen here. Thank you so much for your support. If you would like to become a member, go ahead and click the join button below this video to receive exclusive perks. Make sure to subscribe to my channel down below as well, and please leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. You can check out more content from my channel here, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. EP out.